I'm looking today at Psalm 25, and I'm just going to read some of that psalm now. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. In you I trust, O my God. Do not let me be put to shame, nor let my enemies triumph over me. No one whose hope is in you will ever be put to shame, but they will be put to shame who are treacherous without excuse. Show me your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth and teach me. For you are God, my Saviour, and my hope is in you all day long. Remember, O Lord, your great mercy and love, for they are from of old. Remember not the sins of my youth and my rebellious ways. According to your love, remember me, for you are good, O Lord. Good and upright is the Lord. Therefore he instructs sinners in his ways. He guides the humble in what is right and teaches them his way. All the ways of the Lord are loving and faithful for those who keep the demands of his covenant. For the sake of your name, O Lord, forgive my iniquity, though it is great. Who then is the man that fears the Lord? He will instruct him in the way chosen for him. And so the psalmist talks in lots of ways about how shame comes in when people are not following God, and he wants to be released from shame. He wants to avoid shame happening in his life. You know, some cultures, they talk about different sorts of cultures, and some of them being shame and honor cultures. In other words, shame is a massive factor in what determines the way in which people respond to situations, how they view the world. They're trying to avoid shame on their family, and we might feel a personal sense of shame, but very often, perhaps in the Western culture, we're not so much trying to protect the shame of our family, or if we do something, our whole family is implicated. But David talks here about the whole issue about plunging into this place of shame and not wanting to be in that group of people, but really trusting in God and recognizing that God is the one who is able to protect our reputation and protect our name. You know, whatever people say. He talks about those who are treacherous without excuse. Sometimes people seem to attack others and attack someone's good name without a good reason. And so many of the Psalms, like Psalm 25, are, I would describe them sort of perhaps as a wrestling match. They're characterized by these wrestlings that the psalmist has, wrestlings with the relationship with God, wrestlings with values, wrestlings with, this whole issue of trusting God, being seen to be walking with God, dealing with areas where that's not happening, and how that relates to others as well, and the interactions with others. And one of the lovely parts of this psalm, it says in verse 4, show me your ways, O Lord, teach me your paths. And then verse 5, guide me in your truth and teach me, for you are God, my Saviour. My hope is in you all day long. There's a sense where guidance, direction, leadership, a truth, being taught, all these things come from really trusting in God, and that leads to hope as well. And later on in verse 20, he says, guard my life and rescue me. Let me not be put to shame, for I take refuge in you. There's so much of this need to be hidden in God, and there's a real theme that reoccurs. I've noticed this quite a lot in the Psalms that I've been looking at in the 20s. I've been looking at some Psalms recently between 20 and 25 now, and I've really noticed that theme coming up quite a lot about being protected, being safe, being really finding really God as an advocate, being kind of advocated for. And that's a very key thing. You know, when you're in a position of leadership like David was, there's so many different challenges that come across your path in that situation, accusations, questions about whether you're doing it the right way. It doesn't matter whether you're the person sitting at a desk with various memos or emails flying at you, or whether you're in David's time, obviously somebody who perhaps was fighting battles and making decisions. Whatever happens, when you've got responsibility and you're making decisions, that's often the time that there's lots of critiquing, isn't there? And we can find that quite hard. At the moment, I feel very much for people who have authority, because I've kind of heard some quite close at hand reports of the sort of pressures that they feel sometimes when they have a position. It's very different when you see them at a distance. It's quite easy to criticize, to point the finger, but when you understand the kind of human element of the decision making that they need to do, the choices that they need to make, the difficulty of doing the right thing in any given circumstances. And so David is very conscious of this, and Psalm 25 really outlines some of this very much for us. It gives us a whole picture of this is the believer, but it's also the person who carries responsibilities in life, the person who is trying to follow God, but is dealing with the complexities of circumstances around them, their own personal weakness, their own personal journey. He says, verse 7, remember not the sins of my youth and my rebellious ways. We carry our own formative makeup, don't we, in how we respond to situations. Often we're not happy with perhaps how we react, and thinking like, that wasn't a very adult way to deal with a situation, was it? And so we're conscious of the mistakes we've made perhaps in the past. When we look with retrospect and we see the kind of things we did, and we think, why did I do that? I think as I'm older and wiser, I'm really questioning some of my bad choices and the impact that had, the outcomes that had. So I think it's a very helpful psalm, and there's always this theme of calling out to the Lord and really putting the case before him, and recognizing so often, there's some intense moments in this psalm too, in some of the verses. Verse 19, see how my enemies have increased and how fiercely they hate me. Guard my life and rescue me, let me not be put to shame. Whenever things are intense in the battle, God also is happy to step in and actually meet us there, not just in the abstract on the nice days when it all seems, all the problems of life are remote, but right in the thick of it, he's able to meet with us. So I pray that will be our experience too, that we would find that encounter of meeting God in the middle of all the challenges of life, all the things which we face. And I pray that will be the case for you too.